Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Legends of Sport podcast. I'm your host, Andy Bernstein. Our guest today is someone we have been trying to interview for a long time, former NBA player Craig Hodges. I finally got a chance to sit down with Craig recently, and I'm super happy he was able to join us for this conversation on this week's episode. Craig was a two-time NBA champion with the Chicago Bulls. He was also a three-peat winner of the NBA's three-point contest during All-Star Weekend, joining only the great Larry Bird to accomplish that feat. I got to know Craig better during his stint as a special assistant to Phil Jackson at the Lakers. We talked about how he was instrumental in helping Kobe overcome injury during the 2009-10 season and his observations of Kobe's evolution as a player and a leader. Craig was an outspoken activist during his playing career, which is another important topic we discussed. I really enjoyed this conversation with Craig. I really enjoyed catching up with him. I hope that you guys will enjoy this episode as well. And as always, I'll see you on the backside. Well, Craig Hodges, it's been a while, man. It's so great to see you. Thank you for coming on the Legends of Sport podcast.
No doubt, man. I appreciate you.
One of my favorite guys. I don't say that to everybody, but you seriously one of the guys who would always come over, say hi, have a nice thing to say, shake a hand, and guys like me in the trenches would always appreciate that.
Oh man, it was a good time. I think, for me, I tell people all the time that I played during the golden era of the game.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Because we had a chance to touch the older guys that played with Wilts and that kind of thing, and then connected to the Allen Iversons and the Kobe. So it's we played in a great time, man.
You really did. A two-time champion with the Bulls,
yes.
Right? So you grew up in Illinois.
Yes, grew up in Chicago Heights, Illinois.
Yeah. So were you a Bulls fan growing up?
Oh, absolutely, man. You had to be.
Yeah.
even though we were getting our ass kicked, we were still Bulls fans, man. But in Chicago, the whole motto was wait till next year in all our sports.
Right.
So finally, the Bears broke through in '85. Then we did our things, and then the Sox and the Cubs were able to come along later. So we've had a championship city now.
Yeah. Well, I was a Red Sox fan, being a New Yorker, but I went to school in Massachusetts, so I wouldn't have had any friends if I wasn't a Red Sox fan. And we never thought in our lifetime we'd see him win a World Series. So thank goodness they did. So tell me about going into the league, and you got drafted by the San Diego Clippers, right? Which was almost kind of like a little bit of like a AAA team, right? Man, in those days.
The cool part, though, was that we had a group of veterans, Bill Walton, Swin Nader, Randy Smith, Lionel Hollins. We had some guys that taught us how to be professionals, even though we didn't win any game. We won 18 games, I think, my rookie year. Yeah. But it was one of those things that it was a learning experience, man. And then to have Bill Walton was, still one of my, greatest mentors, man. And as far as teaching me how to go about playing the game and how to, be conscious about life.
Yeah. Let's talk about that, because Bill, one of my dearest friends, left us way too soon, of course, with Jerry West. It's just been crazy lately. Yeah. A couple of things you learned from Bill.
Number one, the first thing Bill talked to me about was knowing the difference between players and management. And he was telling me, regardless to, after my career, if I got into management, make sure I'm on the side of the players, because it's a player's game. Yeah. And likewise, the ability to realize what your potential is. He told me, you have longevity in the game. Just make sure you keep your game tight. Work on your skills and make sure you're in shape all the time. And that was something for me as a 22-year-old. You took it to heart, and it was like, if Bill is saying it, it's the real deal.
Yeah, he was something, man. A genuine guy.
No doubt about it.
And truly, a Renaissance man in many, many ways. But we all got so much from that relationship.
No doubt,
with him.
no doubt.
Crazy. So you played for the great Phil Jackson,
yes.
right? You won 2 championships with Phil. You and I got to know each other better. Of course, we can get to three-point contest and all that stuff, but of course I shot all that. But when you became, I guess, a special assistant under Phil.
Exactly.
And, one of my favorite pictures, honestly, in the Mamba Mentality book is you working out Kobe as he was trying to come back.
Exactly.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about, you had played with Michael. I'm not trying to do any comparisons
no,
here.
not at all.
But here you are with the young Mamba. Wasn't actually that young at that time. It was like mid Mamba.
Right. Yeah, but still,
Yeah.
the intensity was still Kobe, and that's, for me, having a chance to, when you look at basketball and you say, man, I got to play with Bill Walton, got to play for Phil Jackson, got to play for Tex Winter, got to play for Cotton Fitzsimmons, got to play for Paul Silas, Don Nelson. So
that's
I've
a hell
had
of a pedigree right there.
So for me, basketball has been, it's been all gravy, man. You know, and to know that not everybody gets that chance, and when you do, man, cherish it. Cherish it and know how blessed you were to be able to have those people influence your life. And then to be able to, I saw Smush Parker earlier today, and to know the impact that you have on players unknowingly. And he told me how much fun it was to work with me, but at the same time, how much it was about us being focused. And I think that's the thing when we talk about MJ and Kobe, that comparison is the only one I really make, is that their ability to focus on the moment and winning is something that the intensity, you can, as a player, you can work as hard as you want to, but certain players have certain things. And those two players had the gift of, Mamba's was carpe diem. You know what I'm saying? He going to seize the day. And MJ's was just, hey, let's get it.
Exactly.
Simple.
Yeah. Kobe was famous for picking everybody's brain about everything.
Oh, yeah,
he didn't
no
ask
doubt.
me about stuff.
No
He'd
doubt.
ask me for pictures of his, what he called muses, which I just thought he wanted to have nice pictures of the greats, but he used to hang them in his locker and study those pictures.
No doubt.
Did he ever pick your brain about MJ?
Oh, man, the very first flight over to Hawaii. That was when we first started together.
Right.
And get on the plane, and I'm sitting there, we getting ready to taxi off or whatever, and he taps me on the shoulder. Hey, man, we get in. We need to have lunch. Like, all right, man, let's sit. So as soon as it was, man, what was MJ like? Did he make players better?
Oh,
God. it was. Do you think my game is any? I was like, brother, it was just, but it was also amazing to see how much studying he had did on Michael's game. That it was, at times, it was unbelievable to see that it was almost mirror images of one another.
It's unbelievable. There was like sort of this silent battle going on between him and Vince Carter at the time, right? Like, who is the next whatever, MJ, whatever it was, or the next coming of who. And I happened to go out to Toronto and shoot some stuff with Vince, and I came back, and he knew that I had been there, and he goes, how does he practice, man? Like, he needed to know everything about everybody.
And that was the part to me that made him special. Is that, Tex told me, is like, Craig, I cannot get this young man to go out. He wants to come in my room and we sit and watch triangle film over and over, and I had to tell him, get out of my room. And that's, that's the student that he was of the game. But like you said, it was not just a game of basketball. It was a lot of other things, and I think that's what made him special, is that he was a human being, man. It was more than a basketball player, and that's the part that, for me, I miss a lot.
Yeah, it's interesting because the young Kobe that I knew, as a rookie in the first few years, was so obsessed with the game. It was literally 24/7. He just lived it. And I think that came from, being brought up in Italy, coming back to America, being sort of a fish out of water.
Right.
And, he's a scrawny teenager. He had to adapt himself at 18 years old and play with a bunch of men in the NBA.
And did it.
And
did it with – and the thing that I loved about it, and watching him during that time, didn't know him, was that he wasn't afraid. It wasn't any fear. It wasn't any fear of the stage being too large, the pressure being too much. He was ready for it, and he was ready to the point of knowing that it's going to be some errors. It's going to be some shortcomings. I'm going to shoot some air balls to win a game or lose a game, and I'm going to get up the next day. But the funniest thing, he came home. They went on a road trip, and he hit a shot down the stretch or whatever. And I come in the locker room the next day. He say, Haji, man, can you believe they're questioning my clutchness? He said, I told him I was getting ready to do it, and they said, well, whatever. He's like, man, they questioning my clutchness. I said, clutchness. Okay, Kobe.
He made up that
Oh,
word,
man,
clutchness.
Yeah. You know?
It's interesting because, the young Kobe wasn't necessarily a great teammate,
no.
right? And he had this expectation of his teammates being as great as him. I like to talk about this a lot because I think it's important for young people to understand. And as he became, wily veteran and started winning championships, he realized that his job really was to make his teammates as great as they could be.
There you go.
They don't have to be as great as him.
Yes.
Like Pau Gasol talked about that. He talked about how he was great, Pau, but Kobe took him to the next level. Did you see that personally happen?
No doubt about it. And when I look at people like Sasha, Shannon Brown, Andrew, Lamar, he was, even though to some of the guys he was a little brother, he was a big brother to everybody because the way he carried himself as far as the game was concerned, he didn't have a peer. You know what I'm saying? He was at the top of the game. So oftentimes it bothers me when I hear people talk about the GOAT.
Yes.
And Kobe's not involved.
Yeah.
That's ludicrous to me when you look at his volume of work, man. And not only that, but like you said, the latter part, he realized that, I got to bring everybody along, and I got to bring everybody along to a level where, like you said, they're at their best.
Yes.
And if he told me one time, he's like, man, Hodge, if everybody's at their best, not Kobe best, ain't nobody gonna beat us.
That's right. See,
and that was real, man. That
right.
If you get everybody playing at that level, and once again, you had Phil in the mix, you had the coaching staffs that he had, man. It was a great blend, regardless of whether it was Chicago or LA.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So the last thing I want to talk about is about activism, which has changed significantly since your time, needless to say.
Yes, sir.
Right? So, I'm in the bubble in 2020. The whole Black Lives Matter movement, George Floyd situation, the players shut down the league in the bubble. It was dramatic and profound.
Oh, yeah.
And none of us knew, are we going home? Are we staying? Are they playing? We're not playing?
Right.
But when you saw that happen, Craig, with everything you went through, what went through your head?
To see a group of young guys consciously thinking about what the future is. You know what I'm saying? And being able to be, whether it's Kyrie, whether it's George Hill, Dwight Howard, just to see young men see their history in a different light, and to see that they see it from a standpoint that we can have some impact in it. And I think that's the biggest thing for, when I looked at it, I applauded them, because of the fact that they did have enough courage to, stand for something, man. And a lot of times where we are now, if you take that position, it can be some, some collateral damage. And I think, now with the resources that are being made, the salaries that are being made, I think players see that, it's something other than just making money. And at that point in time, the reality of, what was going on in the black community with police-involved brutality, with the economics of our sport, you have a platform that you can build. And that's the thing where, I think Colin Kaepernick shows some of it that, I can be an athlete, I can still be a human being, and I can take a position that not oftentimes is popular, but it's the right thing to do. And I think that's what we saw in the bubble, that players saw that they had some type of unity with the community, and that they had to do whatever they could to not just prove it, but to actually show the compassion and empathy that should be shown during that period of time.
Right, and social media played a huge part of that.
And that, and that's the thing that I tell people, the difference between in 1991 when I went to the White House and gave President Bush a letter, or in 1996 when Mahmoud was doing his prayer or what have you, wasn't social media was not nowhere near what it is. So now you have that instantaneous support base that feels the way you feel, going to speak the way you speak, and going to let people know that this is my man, so that helps a whole lot.
Yeah. Wow. We could talk for a long time, man, but this
fun,
I'm
man.
really glad we got a chance to talk
And
today.
what's so cool, man, it was before Kobe's last game.
Yeah.
I was sitting in the stands
Yeah.
and you saw me.
Yes,
And
I
he was
did.
like, man, what are you doing back here, man? Kobe want to see you, man. Come on.
That's right.
And that was cool, man. That was cool.
Yeah,
that you
I remember
knew,
that.
That you knew and I spoke to Gary.
Yeah.
I seen Gary. It came out. I waved
Sure.
at him or whatever. But you thought about that picture
Yeah.
of me and Kobe working out and
Right.
and what it meant to both of us
Yep.
as far as being able to see that how we work
Mhm.
is how we play. And that's the part that Kobe is so stuck on, is that if I know I'm working on this perfection, I know it's going to be close to perfect when I'm
Yeah, there you go. Well, thank you for bringing that. I
appreciate
do
you,
remember
man.
that moment.
Yeah, man.
And I do remember how much you meant to him because he
man.
talked about you pretty often.
Yeah, that was my boy,
And
man.
and we had to have that picture. In fact, he asked for that. I was going to put it in anyway, but he had to approve it. But he specifically asked for that. He goes, "You remember when I was coming back? I was working out." And I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "That's
Yeah,
going to
man.
be in the book, right?" I said,
Man, I used to have
"Of
to guard
course."
that dude, man. And I'll be like, Kobe, let me have the ball sometime, man. I guard him, man. He'd be like, yo, Hodge, I need some contact. All right, man.
Right.
Let's go. And the thing that he loved more than anything was if we went for 30 minutes, it was 30 minutes of different looks every single time. That he wasn't going to get the same look back to back.
Oh,
and he knew that I would have to guard MJ the same way.
That's
so
right.
a lot of what I was throwing at him was, hey, man, this is stuff I had to try to do when I was guarding Michael.
Yeah.
And hopefully it'll work. But my thing was to make sure that when they get ready to jump, I jump first because I know I'm not going to get up to that level. So make them go through my range.
I love it, man. Well, I'm glad I was there to witness both of those eras because it was truly monumental. And, I don't want to short shrift what you did out there as a player.
No.
Because, as a player, you were amazing. Winning 3 3-point contests in a row. I mean, come on.
Big fun, too.
Yeah. And by the time you got to that third one, it was like nobody was going to bet against you. That was amazing.
That was
yeah.
good, man. Big time.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Craig.
Appreciate
Great
you,
to
brother.
see you, man.
You too,
Thank
man. Peace, y'all.
Well, I was so happy I was able to sit down for this conversation with Craig Hodges on this week's episode. I hope you all enjoyed it as much as I did. Thanks again, everyone, for tuning in to this episode of the Legends of Sport podcast. You know how much we love bringing these conversations to all of you, so please continue to tell your friends to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Legends of Sport, and our Instagram at Legends of Sport. And, of course, my photography can be found on Instagram at ADB Photo Inc. Big thanks, as always, to our producer, Carlin Barker, our editors, Sean Gosser and Addison Xiao, and our intern, Will Allen. Also, a big shout-out to Fujifilm and Memento for being great supporters of the Legends of Sport podcast while we were in Las Vegas, where we happened to have recorded this episode with Craig. Thanks again to all our loyal followers, and we'll be back next week, of course, with another great episode of the Legends of Sport podcast. We'll see you then.